I am an optimist, and my husband is a realist, which means I think he's a pessimist. He doesn't understand why I'm so dang positive all the time. And while it is natural for me, it wasn't always. I have nourished this habit, I've practiced it daily, and now it's a key part of my personality. Now, why would I work so hard to become a positive person? Because I discovered the power of positivity. Your life is less shaped by what happens to you and more influenced by how you choose to see it and respond to it. This is why two people can have the exact same life and have two completely different experiences. Welcome to the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast, where you master your mind and coach your own comeback. You are the hero, you are the guide, and you will learn to architect your life from the inside. I'm your host, Bretagne Stowe, joined by my sister and co-host, Anike Wilder. Enjoy the show. Anike, welcome. I am so excited to talk about the power of positivity. This was actually your suggestion. I'm so glad we're getting to this topic.
Oh, me too. I could talk about the power of positivity all day. It's about your thoughts, your actions, your attitude, how it shapes your life, and how you'll be happier if you focus on the positive. So I am super stoked for this.
Well, why should we, talk about it now? I feel like it's been on my mind for a while. But recently, I had this experience when I was trying to rush and get ready to go teach yoga. I teach yoga at 6 in the morning, and my son had kept me up all night, and I woke up late. I slept in. I had to take out the dogs. I had no extra minutes, and I noticed a moth stuck in my house trying to get out. And I was like, I don't have time to capture this moth. But I thought, no, I need to capture. I can't just leave it when the dogs could get it. That won't be good. So I decided, all right, I'm going to stop and get this moth. It took maybe 3 minutes, but I was so frustrated during those 3 minutes about how awful this was and how an inconvenience this was. And I found myself getting angry and tense. And I capture the moth and I take it out when I leave to go to yoga. And then I start to think, what if this isn't a bad thing? What if I am ruining my day and my morning and I'm going to bring bad energy into yoga by thinking this small little 3 minute inconvenience is the worst thing that could have happened? And so I just sat with that and peace came over me. And then I looked up the meaning of moths, and they are a symbol of transformation. And they are a symbol of not just transformation, but also being drawn to the light, right? Moths are drawn to the light. And I really sat with this idea. And on the way to my yoga class, I came up with a whole message on the impact of this moth and how we can change our outlook. Just like that, we can switch it and we can turn a tiny frustration that will ruin your day into a positive thing that will actually not only increase your experience, but those around you.
Exactly. It's all about how you look at it. It's perception. Like you said, two people can be experiencing the same thing and have a totally different outcome or perception of their day. And I tend to lean on the positive, I think naturally, because I think it's kind of in our DNA. And we were talking about this a little bit, but our family comes from, at least the German side of the family comes from a place of being under communism and war and lack. I remember our mom telling us that on Christmas growing up that their one present was to share one bar of chocolate between six kids. And they had a one-bedroom house and they ended up converting their attic space into bedrooms. And so we grew up with these stories of like, wow, they had nothing and we had massive Christmases growing up. And I feel like we have just so much to be grateful for. And our mom would say things like, well, that's just small potatoes or that's just big potatoes because, we're not under communism war. So everything else is small potatoes in comparison to that. And so that's kind of how my mind thinks it. It's like I kind of rank like, how big of a deal is this really? And then I'll kind of logic my way through positivity.
It's very interesting that mom also brings up that the term small potatoes and big potatoes, because I remember a story my Oma taught me about how they, when she was little during World War II, all they had was a rotten potato to share amongst five people. And so, I just think it's funny that mom's like, oh, that's small potatoes. I'm like, well, small potatoes were a big deal at one point in your life, right? At least for your mom. But you're absolutely right. And it is about perspective. And, I know that I used to be a really crappy version of me. And I try to look over as I'm writing my book right now when some of those pivotal moments when I stopped being just a miserable old cuss and, started to bring a little bit more light into my life and attract better things. And I was curious, Annika, do you remember mom's birthday? So it was in August. We were at a Chinese restaurant. It's like 15 years ago. Do you remember that day?
I do remember. I feel like I don't remember the conversation, but I do remember of you complaining. Like you were a negative person. Like always loved you, always loved having fun with you. You've been through a lot, but there was this period of, I don't know, maybe 10 years or something that you were just upset about everything, negative, hostile, and it was really difficult to like keep calm around you because I just want to be like, why are you so upset all the time? And I say that with love because I think all of us were like we want to help you and we don't know what's going on. And I remember I think I had one of those like fed up moments in the Chinese restaurant when you were complaining about your life. And I basically told you to, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I think I helped give perspective of like, well, why are you looking at life that way?
Yeah, I remember exactly what you said because this was a pivotal time, right? This is a core memory for me. It was a life-changing moment. I was complaining about everything. It's mom's birthday, and I did not care if it was about her, right? Because I had to make it about me. I was so incredibly selfish. And I'm just listing, all these horrible things. I was late. I almost ran out of gas. There was trouble at the pump. I almost got hit on the way in, like just constant negativity just that day. And I was like, I just feel like the world is out to get me. And you said this like looking down at your, the menu, or because we hadn't gotten food yet. And you kind of look up, but it's like you were wanting to say it, but we're a little afraid. And you said, well, you kind of expect bad things to happen. And I was like, what? You're like, you kind of expect the bad things to happen. And dad was like, yeah, you kind of do. And Johanna was like, yeah, you kind of do. And everyone started to chime in. I was like, I do not. And I don't expect bad things. And of course, mom on her birthday comes to my rescue and is like, stop picking on Britannia. She's going through a rough time. And there's so much more to that story, but I bring that up because I think a lot of people look at me and they look at you and they just expect that we've been positive our entire lives and that it's really easy and that it's a character trait that maybe we've been given. But no, it's been nourished. And there are several resources out there that have helped me shift my perspective, not just these pivotal moments, but there are books and podcasts. And so I'm curious, Annika, what is one of your favorite resources or books that have helped influence your positive thinking?
Well, I've read a lot, I've researched a lot about the power of positive thinking over the years, and I honestly can't remember all of them. But the biggest one currently, we've talked about it so many times, is the Four Agreements. It doesn't actually talk about the power of positivity in those words, but it's basically like don't take things personally, don't make assumptions. These are all like actions and things to do to think more positively in your life instead of assuming life is out to get you or hurting you. Don't make assumptions at all. Don't assume it's about you at all. Or if somebody's hurting your feelings, don't take it personally. These are all ways of being more positive.
Yeah, I think people just go, oh, the book, The Power of Positive Thinking, which is great. Or another book is The Happiness Advantage. It's excellent book. But there are other resources like the Four Agreements or Atomic Habits that help nourish that positive thinking. One of my favorites is the gap and the gain. And this is about how instead of measuring what you're missing, instead of measuring like how you've fallen short from your goals or where you thought you would be in life, look back to see how far you have come. And it's that shift in perspective that will keep you motivated to keep moving forward.
Yeah, it's a book that everybody brings up in the real estate world. It's on my list. I've never actually read it, but the point is that there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of books to help people understand the concept and the science behind the power of positive thinking or the power of positivity.
Well, not everyone's going to go out and read these books, right? Or start, listening to a TED Talk or, the podcast, The Happiness Lab. So we're going to give you some digestible information and some tidbits to help you transform your life today. So, Annika, let's start with what positivity actually is and what it isn't.
First, every time, every concept, you have to start with awareness. Like, if you're not aware of what you're thinking, how would you know if you're positive or negative? And most of the time, we think the same things we thought yesterday, and we're just totally unaware of how we are talking to ourselves, how we're talking to others, what we're thinking. And so, your thoughts influence your experience. It's not about what happens, but how you interpret it.
Yes. And then you have to choose. So once you're aware, you then have to choose empowering perspectives. So you can recognize the choice to see your glass as half empty or to see your glass as half full, knowing that both exist. This isn't toxic positivity, right? But then you're choosing to look at it half full. This doesn't mean you don't see the negative. It just means you're choosing the positive. And that's what we mean by an empowering perspective.
Exactly. And I love the glass full, glass empty concept because this is something that's been around for decades. I don't know, my whole life, our mom's whole life. Like it's been around forever, but it really makes a huge difference. Like I remember we got broken into in our first apartment when I was married, and we ended up using our renter's insurance because our bike got stolen, my laptop got stolen, a bunch of things got stolen. And so we used our renter's insurance, but we were already struggling to pay rent that month. And our renter's insurance was almost like the payout was almost exactly the amount we needed to pay rent. So we could look at it like, oh, this is horrible. People are watching us. I don't feel safe. Like we got broken into. This sucks. We can like totally be stuck in a victim mind state, or we can say like, oh, wow, this was a means to helping us pay rent and not get evicted from our apartment. What a cool way to look at it.
What a blessing. And I would say you're taking emotional responsibility here, taking responsibility on how you feel and not being reactive, right? Making that choice.
Exactly. And there has to be some kind of like training of your brain, right? The happiest people are rarely those who have the most. If you think about it, like the richest people aren't the happiest people. This tells me that the people without computers and technology, which is all in itself a topic we should talk about sometime, they are very happy because they don't have a lot, but it's because they're choosing. They learn to be happy with what they have. Being grateful changes your perspective. Acknowledging challenges as growth opportunities instead of just challenges or hardships.
Yeah, it's that practice, right? You for everything that could quote unquote go wrong, giving yourself an opportunity to see how I can look at this differently. And we'll go a little bit more into this. I have a cool trick that I'm going to help you guys with to help shift that perspective. But let's also talk about what it is not. And a lot of people think, oh, you're just positive all the time. Like it's a negative thing. Like I don't see my problems. I'm not ignoring my problems. It's not denial. I'm not avoiding them. I know that they're there. But being so miserable and and gloom about every obstacle that shows in my life actually makes me feel stuck. It doesn't propel me forward. So we're not saying ignore your problems or don't see them. We're saying, see them, but choose differently.
Exactly. You don't have to pretend everything is fine when it's not, but you can look at it in a way that, like you said, is a blessing. Or this might be a terrible, terrible advice, but because you're not supposed to compare. But honestly, something that really helps me is when I feel like there's like hardships, I will say, well, at least I don't have this. Or at least I have, like, if my car's AC is not working, I'll say, well, at least I have a car. Or
Hmm.
if one car is in the shop and it's like these are like first world problems where I'm complaining, like, oh no, we're only down to one car. I could say, well, at least we have one car. Or at least I have a roof over my head. Or at least I'm not like that person who has to ride a bike every day to work. Like I'm like comparing to other people, but it helps bring perspective and help kind of, like I said, rank your problems and how they're really not as big as we think they are.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be an actual, person that you know. It could just be this fictitious person. Maybe you're imagining someone who has to ride a bike that's too small for them, uphill, both ways, in the rain, coming both directions, right? Like it doesn't actually have to be a person that you know, but compared to that idea, your life is pretty good and you have it pretty easy. Now, this isn't just, out of the minds of Bretagne and Anike. There's actual science that backs this up. The real science that backs up the power of positivity is a very in-depth field. It's quite expansive, but we wanted to break down some specific points that I think will hopefully make an impact. The first is your brain has a negative bias. This is by design. There's nothing wrong with you. So if you are quote unquote a realist, which means I think you're a pessimist, and you're not an optimist, there's nothing wrong. I don't want to insult you by say that you're underdeveloped, but it is a sign of survival. So if you're living in survival, then you are going to have a more of a negative bias because we are wired to look for problems. Because if we did not look for problems when we, had to go out and forage for our own food and hunt, and we were in like small groups living in caves, if we did not go out and see what that noise was or go get fire, whatever it was, we would die. And so we have this in us to keep us safe. It is survival. And if we go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that is the very base. That is where we have to address first before we can experience enlightenment. But a lot of us choose to stay there. So, no, there's nothing wrong with you. It's completely normal, but we want to move past that.
Exactly. And the thoughts that we have become patterns. We've talked about this so many times and the power of your thoughts. Like you are what you think, but like grooves in a record, most of these patterns we are totally unaware of. And then the more they are repeated, repetition becomes a belief. It actually becomes like ingrained in us because it's who we think or what we are thinking all the time. It literally becomes a part of who we are. It shapes our personality.
Yeah, it becomes our identity. Like we had talked about the four agreements that you're making agreements that become a part of your beliefs. And the thing is what when our thoughts are repeated and they become beliefs, and then we constantly rethink those thoughts, and we have thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts in a single day, and 95% of those are repetitive, then you're going to be thinking the same thoughts you had yesterday. And guess what? 80% of those are negative. So not only are you having the same thoughts every day, but you're having the same negative thoughts every day. So if you are stuck in survival, if you are playing that record, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to start to make a change. The science tells us that there are thoughts that are going to pop into your head and you can't always control that, but you do have control on what you choose to ruminate on and obsess over and to start to take as true.
Taking responsibility and becoming aware and being intentional is super, super important. And it will take training. It'll take time. So it might start with reading these good books is a gentle way of calling out your bad behavior. I'm reading one right now. I just finished it called The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong, which is a phenomenal book about men and women, mostly about how men's brains work. But she said that women tend to say the word issue. And I was like, I don't know if I say issue a lot. And and then I was talking to my husband. I was like, well, my issue is, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just said issue. Women do say issues, or my problem is, or whatever. So like Alison Armstrong called me out in this book, and now I'm aware of it. And so now I can say, okay, how's a different way I can say this instead of having this repeat autopilot type of thought and behavior?
I love that. So, like we said, there is an impact here and there is a negative bias. So, let's go into a little deeper why positivity matters. So, just like me, 15 years ago, the power of positivity wasn't obvious. In fact, Annika was quite positive and mom was too. I remember her skipping into the living room one time with a clothing organizer. Do you remember this? And
Mm-mm.
with a clothing organizer, her closet was a mess. And my mom and were not in a good space, and I was ultra uber negative. And she skips in and she's like, "Look what I bought, Britannia." Not to the family. She came specifically to me. "Look what I bought, Britannia. It's going to help me get organized." And I just looked at her and I said, "What are you so damn happy about?" Who says that to their mom? But I was so miserable. And I could see that I stole a little bit of her joy. And what's really effed up is I actually felt a little bit of joy from making her miserable. I didn't feel bad right away. That came later. And so for me, it wasn't so obvious about the power of positivity, but it was the negative power of negativity. I truly expected bad and horrible things to happen, and so they did. So whether you choose to be positive or you choose to be negative, these are the areas that you are impacting. First, your experience of life. It's not about your circumstances. We have a father-in-law who has had to get his leg amputated. And this could have been a downfall. Oh my gosh, I lost my leg. My life is over. I'm miserable. He is actually thriving, the happiest he has been. He actually had trouble walking. His gait was a little off. And in getting his new leg, they could adjust his gait, and he's actually in less pain. He's happier. He moves more, but he could have easily been negative. So it's not about those circumstances, it's how you choose to perceive it. And you can choose how you respond, and this will create the experience of your life.
hmm And another area in your life that it affects you is your actions. So if you're stuck in the negative mindset, you will want to procrastinate, you'll live in fear, you'll hesitate, you'll play small because you're just being negative. Negativity, if you've ever done muscle testing or you put your arm out and you're thinking negatively, your arm gets pushed down really easily. If you're thinking positively, like I can do this, or thinking good things about yourself, you can hold your arm very strong, and whoever's pushing on your arm will have a harder time pushing it down. This is a physical representation in our body, how a negative mindset literally weakens us. But a positive mindset naturally is expansive. It helps you to look for creative solution or move forward even when you're unsure. It gives a type of resilience.
I was just thinking about that. Like, I remember running a race, and when I thought, I can't do this anymore, this is hard, I slowed down. I even tripped. I wanted to stop. But if like the little train, was like, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, I had the energy to keep going. And so you're absolutely right. And it also affects your relationships. Listen, you don't want to be around a negative Nancy. Even if you struggle to see the positive yourself, I encourage you, I challenge you here. Look at your friends, look at your family. Even if you are a realist, I bet you enjoy spending time with more positive people. You feel better. You feel like there are more possibilities, there's more hope, there's more energy, because that same energy is what's the word I'm looking for? It leaks onto you, it grows, it expands. It's contagious. That was the word. It's contagious. And so, in your relationships, if you find that you're constantly complaining, you also might be pushing people away.
And we can't end this podcast without talking about your health, the
Mhm.
power of positive thinking, the power of positivity, how it affects your health. Optimistic people live longer. And there are large studies that have found that people with higher levels of optimism tend to have lower rates of cardiovascular disease, lower overall mortality, better physical health outcomes, greater resilience during illness and recovery. Like I said, resilience. I mean, the optimism. Who wouldn't want a better quality of life? In their health, like who wouldn't want that type of resilience of like, oh, when I'm sick I'm going to get better, or being able to live longer in a healthy way, like why not?
Yeah, yeah. Just start thinking positively for the health benefits. Even if you don't believe all the other stuff, it is scientifically backed. You can do your own additional research. It also helps with problem solving. Get this, studies have found that emotions like joy and curiosity and gratitude and hope broaden your thinking. They help us become more creative and flexible and resourceful. Negative emotions are useful too. I'm not saying they're not, but they tend to narrow your focus. So I forget which book it is in, but there's a book that one of these happy or positive books that talk about the Tetris effect. It's the same as if you were driving a white car, you buy a white car, and all of a sudden all you see are white cars. Or when you're playing Tetris, when you're trying to like, you're looking for a specific shape to fit, that's all you see is that shape and where it can fit, right? So if you are positive, you will see the things that can be fixed and how to fix them. If you are negative, all you can see are the problems and you won't find solutions.
Exactly. It's like skiing or snowboarding. If someone's saying, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree,
You'll hit
like,
the tree.
oh, you're going to hit the tree because that's what you're focusing on. But if you're focusing on stay on the path, stay on the path, stay over here, keep steady, stand up strong, I don't know, use your abs, whatever people say.
She doesn't ski or snowboard, folks.
Um, but the point is, if you, whatever you focus on expands, right? And
Mhm.
so there's these results that come. You can't outperform your mindset. Like you can't force it to like change. You have to change your mindset. So if you practice positive thinking, you'll inevitably be more successful.
Hands down, hands down. When I was thinking about this last night, the example of Nelson Mandela came to mind. I think most people have heard of him and have read about him in history books, but a little, tidbit of history here. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison. He was already an adult and spent 27 years in prison under South Africa's apartheid regime before becoming the country's very first Black president. All right. During those years, he endured hard labor, isolation, harsh conditions, and yet he emerged advocating reconciliation rather than revenge. Positive psychology often cites a lot of things that Nelson Mandela did. He was a prisoner for almost 30 years, and then he became a president. And that is not by accident. There are several things that he did. One of them was he found meaning over circumstances. So Mandela found purpose in his suffering. That's like the other book on our list, the Search for Meaning.
Yeah, man's search for meaning.
The man's first. It's the same thing. He viewed his imprisonment as part of a larger struggle for justice.
Hmm.
Also, hope without denial. He never denied the reality of his situation. He didn't ignore his problems. Instead, he maintained the belief that his actions mattered and that the future would be different. He found freedom in forgiveness and growth through adversity. What positive psychologists call post traumatic growth is the idea that people can emerge from a hardship with greater wisdom, resilience, and purpose. This is all brought up all the time in positive psychology. Nelson Mandela didn't read these books, he didn't listen to the podcasts. He actually trusted in himself and his vision, and he believed that there was more. Sometimes it just starts with this small shift of not thinking negative and maybe starting to think a little more neutral so that you can get to the positive. And then you'll see you'll be more successful once you start repeating those thoughts.
Hmm. Yeah, there's the director of sales on my real estate team told me this phrase. It's really simple to remember is you can go through it or you can grow through it. And it's very easy to go through things on autopilot negatively. Life is working against you, or you can grow through those hardships. Everybody has hardships. Everybody listening to this in the world knows somebody going through a hard time, whether it's themselves or a family member. They have experienced death. They know someone with cancer. They know someone with autism. They know someone who's lost their job. They know someone who's getting a divorce. They know someone with a miscarriage. Every single person is going through some kind of hardship in their own way. Are you going to just go through it or are you going to grow through it?
I love that. I've heard that phrase before, but I love that reminder. I'm glad you shared that. So let's talk about how to start to practice that positivity, how to grow through it. Like we said earlier, it starts with awareness. All right, folks, we're going to bring that up over and over and over again. You catch the thought that you're having and you ask yourself, is this helping me or is this hurting me? Maybe you don't even know if it's hurting, but is it making it better? Sometimes it might not be obvious. So then I encourage you to reframe in real time. So when you say something like, this is hard, and you've caught that thought, now you can kind of change it to, this is growing me. I am learning something. This is a challenge, but I am open to it. Or, I used to say all the time, I'm behind. I'm behind in life. Well, let's shift that. I'm on my own timeline, right? You've never done this before. Who created this timeline, anyways? All right. So catch the thought and then in real time, reframe.
Hmm. Yeah, it's something that it's really cathartic when you just think before you speak.
I've never
You
heard
know?
of that before, Annika.
It's so simple, but you will be amazed. Another thing that I learned in the Queen's Code is she says that women never give men the opportunity to actually get to the bottom of what they're trying to say. And she's saying women just need to give men more time to speak by just listening instead of reacting. And so it's being aware of yourself, being aware of your thoughts, being aware of like, I want to react, I want to interject, I want to interrupt. But instead, she says, he's digging for treasure here, and I'm going to wait it out until I get the treasure. And you will be surprised that if you just listen more and be okay with silence, that your man will just keep going and going and going, and he'll have way more to say than you ever realized. So this is all coming back to just being aware and noticing, like stopping yourself in your tracks, and instead of being reactive, just pause and think before you speak, think before you react.
I love that. And I've seen that recently in my life. I think we should do an episode on the power of listening, for sure. And like I'd mentioned before, that if it's hard for you, if you start to notice these thoughts and it feels inauthentic to go from, ugh, my life sucks to, wow, everything's amazing, because that is not natural, right? To go from one polar side to the other. There is a bridge, and that's neutrality. Okay. So start with, instead of like, this sucks, be like, well, it's temporary. Maybe it still kind of sucks. But instead of saying this sucks, just say it's temporary, it's temporary. Or I can't do this can become, I don't know how to do this yet, right? Allow yourself to take the necessary steps towards positivity. Even if you're not innately a positive person, or you're in the middle of trying to become more positive, just taking those steps towards positivity will start to show the benefits in your life. And of course, gratitude. Guys, we talk about gratitude all the time, but make it real. Don't like, I'm grateful for my shoes. I'm grateful for my protein bar. I'm grateful for, I don't know, my shoelaces, I guess, because they're on my shoes. Like, let's let's be honest. Let's be real. Maybe you really are grateful for your shoes and then be intentional and say that because there are people who don't have shoes. But
Mhm.
start small. Be like, well, I guess I'm grateful I have a job. I'm grateful that I got to my job. I have a car to help me get to my job. I'm grateful that I came home. I'm grateful that my, son is here. I'm great. And you'll find that as you start small and even a little sarcastically in the beginning, but you keep going, it builds and you'll start to see the real gratitude, just like you said, right? Listen to yourself a little bit more, keep talking, and then you'll find that buried treasure.
Hmm. And who you spend your time with, pay attention to that. Your environment is everything. I mean, Britannia, wouldn't you say that the person that you were in a relationship with for like 7 years totally impacted your mindset and your negativity?
100%. And then the people that we attracted together, then after I was out of that relationship, I still hung out with those horrible people. And I stayed stuck. So it was like I was stalled and negative for like 14 years. It wasn't just the 7 years in this relationship.
Mhm.
It's mind-boggling to me that people don't realize that who they spend time with really impacts them.
Yeah, it's why I intentionally, this might sound terrible, but it's why I intentionally try not to hang out with divorced women because you will inevitably start thinking like, what would life be like as a divorced woman? And that's not the goal for me. I want to be married. I love my husband. I love my kids. But if I'm hanging out with divorced women all the time, it will impact you. So pay attention who you spend your time with. Also, who you spend your time with can be the books that you're reading. Those are authors. Your authors are who you spend time with. So if you're reading junk, if you're listening to the news or on social media, that's who you spend your time with too. And it can impact your mindset.
Absolutely. And the truth is that you're not going to feel positive all the time. You can do all these things and still have some negative thoughts. And that's okay. That's normal. And pay attention to those. Notice the negative feelings. You'll have bad days and life will test you. But remember, positivity is not how you feel, but how you choose to respond. So, in today's Coach Yourself segment, we already shared some tools, but here are some reflective questions to help you. What thoughts am I repeating daily? Are they helping me build the life I want, or are they helping me tear it down? Where am I choosing negativity out of habit, out of conditioning, right? Maybe you don't even realize that it's a choice. And here's a fun exercise. So write down 3 negative default thoughts. We all have them. Okay. Even Annika and I, who practice positivity, have these negative thoughts. Now write those down and then write a neutral version of these thoughts. After you write the neutral version, then you write a positive. So here are some examples. A negative thought that I would have all the time, and sometimes, recovering from having a baby, I sometimes have, is I am fat. The neutral thought is my body is changing and I can make choices that support my health. The positive thought, I am becoming healthier and stronger each day. So just notice those slight shifts in language. There are several other examples that you can even go into ChatGPT to help you if you're not sure, like, well, what would be a neutral way to say this or a positive way to say this? And then create an anchor statement. So a thought of the day that you can repeat, something like everything's working for me, or I can handle whatever comes my way, or my favorite, the universe is conspiring for me, not against me. So, in closing, your thoughts are shaping your life, whether you realize it or not. And if you have leaned towards the negative, you are not alone. But just because you have always been that way doesn't mean you have to stay that way. And if you want to change your life, you have to do something different. No, you don't have control over everything that happens, but you do have control on how you choose to respond to it. Start small. You got this. And remember, it's a practice, not a perfect. This has been another episode of the Be Your Own Life Coach podcast. If you found value in today's conversation, subscribe and share the love. And remember the teachings of Lao Tzu. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. Until next time, trust yourself, take the wisdom, take the breath, and take the next step.